Revelation 1816. From the 17th of February 1941. Fighting Christ. Streader of God. Worldview. The spiritual battle is making itself felt throughout the world, but it is not yet being openly waged. A worldview where the attitude towards God is only taken into account in passing is already a suppression of what is actually the most important thing in earthly life. The consequence of such a worldview must therefore be the fight against everything spiritual, for where the right relationship to God is not established, humanity is in bondage to the God-opposing power, and this determines people to fight everything that is divine. People's wrong thinking can only be traced back to the influence of this power, and the only protection against it remains the invocation of good spiritual strength, the invocation of God. But how can God be willing to help if this willingness of God is denied? And it is a denial if God is not recognized as an entity which is in closest contact with its living creations. People try to take this belief in an essential deity away from humanity and thereby also make the right relationship with God impossible. These are the signs of the real, that is public, struggle against Christ and his teaching. And this battle will take on such forms that the work of the opposing forces will be quite obvious. And therefore God gives equally obvious evidence of his activity and his love for misguided humanity. Therefore he lets his divine word flow to earth everywhere so that the few who still have the right attitude towards God will also recognize the consequences of those, that these few stand in truth and can stand up for God's visible working and for his divine teaching with fullest conviction. Such visible evidence is permitted because God's adversary spares no means to oust him from people's hearts. God does not prevent the working of these forces but equally sends out his fighters and equips them with his strength. He gives the pure divine word where the human being is willing to receive it and thus descends to earth himself in the word in order to prepare his fighters for the spiritual battle. And it will prove that the small flock of God's fighters is more powerful than the adversary, who certainly fights with the support of all forces from the underworld but is nevertheless defeated, because God's fighters have a strength at their disposal which far surpasses them. God does not allow himself to be mocked. He is loving and merciful and wants to come to the aid of people who err and are lacking due to ignorance, but he will never allow the spirit of darkness to dominate the world and it will now try to take over. Thus the battle will now be fought and the confessors of the essential deity, the confessors of Christ, will truly emerge from the battle as victors. Amen.